Welcome to the Less Doing podcast, where you will learn how to start living more by doing less.
Let me help you optimize, automate, and outsource your entire life so you can focus on doing the things you love.
Now here's your host, Ari Meisel.
Welcome back to the Less Doing podcast. I'm your host, Ari Meisel, and my guest today is my friend Ben Hardy, who, among many other things, is the #1 writer on Medium. He's the author of a new book called Willpower, Doesn't Work. He's a father, a platform grower, and just an all-around interesting, awesome guy. So Ben, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, Ari, I'm really glad to be here with you, man.
So let's get right into let's start with Medium. Okay, so you didn't become the #1 writer on Medium by accident, right? So let's talk about what that journey looked like and how you kind of got started on that and got to where you are now.
Absolutely. So I started blogging online in about April of 2015. And at that time, I had known I've wanted to be a writer since about 2010. And I had served a humanitarian mission, had a lot of what you could call spiritual or powerful experiences, also traumatic experiences. And it was on my mission that I really started writing a lot, specifically in my journal, and reading a lot of whether it be spirituality, philosophy, self-improvement, psychology, a lot of stuff like Stephen R. Covey, and kind of decided in 2010 I wanted to be a writer. And then just spent, from 2010 to 2013, finished my undergraduate in psychology. And then in 2014, I jumped into a PhD program in organizational psychology. And it was around that time that, it was kind of like dawning on me, I haven't really started writing yet. So it'd been like 4 years and I had been reading a lot, continued to write in my journal, but I hadn't ever actually started the career development side of becoming a writer. So it was right when I started my PhD program, which was in August of 2014, my wife and we started putting in to become foster parents. And in early 2015, we became foster parents. And that kind of opened me up. So I was in my first year of my PhD program. And when we became foster parents of 3 kids, it really kind of like put a fire under me. I kind of like to relate it to, it's like the opposite of like in Spider-Man, Uncle Ben talks about how with great power comes great responsibility. And I actually think it's more the opposite. It's like when you have great responsibility, it kind of gives you more power. For me, I felt like I couldn't get my writing career moving until I had like enough traction or responsibility. And once we got the foster kids, I was kind of like, okay, my life is about to really speed up as far as I'm going to have more, I have to dedicate way more time to other things. And so that's kind of where I decided, okay, I really need to learn this stuff. So for the first couple of months in 2015, I started studying stuff like Brennan Burchard, really just all sorts of sources, Michael Hyatt. I mean, there was a lot. Actually, even you, I even read some of your stuff on this platform and was just digging into whatever I could find as far as like, how do you actually start doing this stuff? And then I came across an online course from John Morrow. He had a guest blogging course and I bought it. It was $197. And I think that was in April or May of 2015. And I listened to the first 3 modules. It taught me how to write viral headlines and it taught me how to pitch myself onto blogging platforms. And so I started pitching myself all sorts of places, low-level self-improvement blogs, and then copy-pasting my articles into Medium. And then And so from about April to June of 2015, I probably put like 10 or so articles onto Medium. It was a new platform. I didn't even know what it was. I don't know if it was new then, but it was new to me. And then, in June, one of my articles went viral there. And then I've just been writing there ever since. And I mean, obviously I can talk about the development of what I've learned. But that first article going really viral in June of 2015, which is an article about my morning routines, kind of opened the door. And then since then, I've just been kind of making it my craft, my study to understand that platform.
Well, and, first of all, congratulations on the success that has sort of validated, I guess, for you. And also, I mean, you've been the #1 writer for 3 years now, that means, which in itself, I feel like is an accomplishment that nobody sort of knocked you off the hill.
I know. I don't know why. I mean, yeah. So basically what happened was I wrote that article. Um, and, immediately I got emails from Huffington Post, Business Insider, and New York Observer. And that's one thing that's, can happen when an article does well on like Quora, LinkedIn or Medium, is all sorts of places will ask if they can syndicate it. But I didn't even know any of that. And I was just like, oh, wow. So I got my own Huffington Post blog, didn't really use it. And then I started writing at New York Observer for a little bit for pay for each article. And I was just not getting any subscribers. Because on Medium, you can just, and we can go into this, but you can directly market and send people to landing pages and whatnot. But yeah, so I decided after a few months of writing at the Observer that it just wasn't working for me. So I went back to Medium. And then from like September through the end of the year in January, I just republished everything I had written for the Observer and just started getting a ton of traction. And then I've just been writing there ever since. And yeah, surprisingly, no one's kind of come and knocked me off. There's been I would probably say that in the last 2.5 years, writers that have kind of really risen, and they're often in the top stories. But no one, and I could point to several articles because lots of people actually like study Medium as far as like the top writers, what works on Medium, and I have a few articles that, people do all sorts of diagnostics, like what's the average story length, for the most viral articles, and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm waiting for the day when someone knocks me off so that I can focus on something else.
Yeah. Any idea what caused that first article to go viral?
Yeah, I've thought a ton about it. I've since studied it a lot, and I think that one, it was kind of just the right time. So it was a morning routine article, and the headline really did work. And, one of the things I do, which I teach people to do on Medium, is continually republish articles. So I republish my articles on Medium every about 3 to 6 months. And I don't delete the older version. I just literally copy paste it in as if I was retweeting the same tweet from 6 months before, but this time it's an article. So this article continues to do well. It doesn't do as well as it initially did. But so the article was 8 things every person should do before 8 a.m. And so, there's the 8 before 8. So that, it was just a good headline. But then I think what made it do really well was, first off, it was just a listicle, and listicles on morning routines often do well. There was an element of surprise. I talked a lot about taking cold showers. So I think that, the articles that I've seen do well, they're research backed, they're structured in a way that is easy to consume. There's both emotion and there's sophistication. So you're writing with head knowledge and I guess what you could call heart knowledge, where you're writing from experience and emotion. You're provoking the reader, but you're also like backing what you're saying with evidence or something to make it credible. And then having an element of surprise, which in this case was take a cold shower and just diving into how that feels. And so, yeah, I think there was just a lot of contributing factors. I think a lot of it was just timing.
You just hit it right. And so where do you get a lot of the inspiration for the things that you write about? Just from your daily life, your PhD work, everywhere?
It really is everywhere. Truthfully, I am not a typical PhD student. So I obviously enjoy Western psychology and Western medicine, but I'm very Eastern as well in my belief systems. I'm also, spiritual. And so not all of my beliefs are up in the intellectual realm of what I would call Western psychology. And so I really enjoy that stuff, but to me, it's not the be all end all. I draw from it. Kind of my guiding principle is like, find truth wherever you can find it, whether it be religion, science, philosophy. So I draw from all sorts of sources. Like the Beatles, for example. The Beatles there's a lot of people who have studied what made the Beatles so successful. And one of the people who's really studied their work said that unlike a lot of their contemporaries, they drew on all sorts of sources. They didn't go way too narrow in their niche. Like they were studying all sorts of types of music and they were integrating that in. And I try to do that myself. But as far as what actually inspires my writing, I a lot of it is kind of my deeper spiritual beliefs. A lot of it's, my family motivates me just to like be successful. And a lot of it's just continually reading and trying to implement new things. Like I just love reading and learning. And so when I learn a lot of stuff, my brain kind of just lights up, and I just like living a better life. And so I just try to write the things that seem to be working for me, but I also try to write from an emotional state that I want to create in the reader. So like I won't just jump on Medium and write an article at 8:30 in the morning just because that's my time to write. Like if I'm not feeling it, if I'm not in the right mindset, if I'm not feeling the emotions that I want to provoke in the reader, I won't write. And so,
That's cool.
I mean, I might take, yeah.
No, I like that's a good way of putting it. I really like that. If you're not feeling the emotions that you want to evoke, then you're not going to do it. That's great. And then how do you like keep track of the things that you want to write about? Do you have a list somewhere, or do you use any tools for that? What tool do you use to actually write in? Like, do you use an app or anything like that?
I usually literally just write in Medium nowadays. I used to initially write on Word docs and then just copy paste into Medium, and then I would syndicate elsewhere, whether that be New York Observer or Huffington Post. But now I literally just like how the platform of Medium looks, and so I'll usually just write within Medium, and then if I want to publish it elsewhere, like on LinkedIn or something, I'll just copy paste it from Medium over to somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay. And then are you keeping the ideas written down somewhere?
I have a journal. Yeah, and it's a very sloppy journal. It's not I don't use Evernote, and it's something I probably should have used for a long time. For me, I really like the quote, and it's something that Joe Polish, who's a mutual friend of ours, he says a lot. He says it's better to be prolific than perfect. And so, I've found in my writing journey that quantity is the path to quality. And so, Evernote would have been something really nice. I find that the way I organize my ideas now is just literally in published articles. And so like if I want to go back and find ideas or quotes or research, I'll just dig into my articles on various topics. How I like ideate and come up with the ideas is, I have just a physical paper journal, and I write in, specific environments. I go to my, my car. I park in specific parking lots, listen to specific music. Yeah, I've just been writing in my journal for a lot of years, and especially in the morning time when my mind is fresh. And one of the big things that I've learned how to do is just connect ideas to the other. So like I think one of the best things to do for writing viral articles is like work on the headline first. And sometimes you've got to like write the same headline like 20 times, but once you have the headline and the angle, then it's just like, what are the 5 to 10 ideas that are like the main ideas that pull this idea together? And so I learned that idea actually from Greg McKeown, who wrote Essentialism. But it's just like create outlines. And then you can kind of write from a stream of consciousness in a way. So if I have the outline made, which usually just is created in my journal, just thinking about what are all like the 5 to 10 ways, what are the 5 to 10 interesting things about this idea that I want to write about? So if it's like a list, it'd be like, what are the 5 or 10 things I would say about this thing? And then just once I have that structure down, which usually takes me just, especially in the morning, maybe just 20 minutes, then I can write the article very fast. If I don't have the structure, I probably won't write it. So yeah.
And now let's talk about about the book Willpower. So how did that come about? And is it very different kind of content, or how did you decide that you wanted to write the book, and what's the book going to help people with?
Yeah, man. So Willpower Doesn't Work is all about how your environment shapes you, and about how in Western culture, we're very individualistic. And so we take for granted the situational factors around us. It's what psychologists call the fundamental attribution error. So like if you're driving on the road and someone cuts you off, you're probably likely to like think that they're a bad person. You're less likely to think about what situational factors are influencing their behavior. Like you're probably not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And psychologists call that the fundamental attribution error, because what psychologists, especially social psychologists, have found the situation that actually shapes not only behavior, but also psychology. And so I've been spending the last 4 years studying psychology, and it kind of changed my perspective, because back when I was applying to PhD programs, I was actually applying to work with Roy Baumeister, because advisor I had when I was in my undergrad got his PhD under Roy Baumeister, and Roy Baumeister wrote the book called Willpower, which is a New York Times bestseller, and he's kind of the godfather of that research. And so I was really interested in willpower. I thought it was really cool stuff. But as I kind of studied more and more into psychology, I began to realize the power of the situation and how most, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but I guess to answer the question simply, it made me really look back on my life and about, what were some of the pivotal biggest leverage points that changed who I am. And a lot of it had to do with just situation. Like I grew up in a rough environment. There was a lot of drugs, a lot of addiction, it was just a rough situation. And so it wasn't until I went on that mission that I was able to like totally recreate my identity. And then when I came home, I had a new identity. I didn't fit into my old environment, and I didn't want to readapt to that environment. And so I chose to surround myself with different people. And then when we became foster parents, I watched these 3 kids who we have come from a really crappy situation. And they, not that our situation's ideal, but I began just studying how environment shapes behavior. And that just led me down this big rabbit hole of realizing that context really is key. And there's a quote from Eben Pagan, who talks a lot about what he calls inevitability thinking, which is basically that you can predict success if you create the conditions that make it happen. And now there's all sorts of science now, talking about like epigenetics and stuff, and about, brain plasticity and all sorts of stuff showing that your environment in a lot of ways dictates even what genes are flipped on and off and stuff. And so just really it was the whole study of all this stuff. And then it led to way bigger rabbit holes, like, investing in high tier mastermind groups. Like, so you and I met, for example, in Genius Network. And so I started studying like, how does your psychology change when you put yourself in an environment like that? And how can you quickly adapt to those type of environments? Because really, what a lot of the kind of common self-improvement notions are is that, the inside creates the outside. It's like where the mind goes, the body follows. Like mental creation precedes physical creation. And it's all about like your thoughts or like your attitudes or your willpower. It's like, it's all very individualistic focused. But where I think the research is going and where I think the future of self-improvement is it's not that change happens from the inside out. I think it's more going to be that change happens from the outside in. And that when you create the right environment or the right conditions, as Eben Pagan would say, then you can really control what type of psychological experience you have. And so, obviously I can go into, if you wanted, like a lot of the specific strategies I use, but that was kind of
one would be great to share with the audience.
Yeah. So one thing about Ari, and I actually interviewed you for the book, is I talked to you about how you use environment to influence your work. And, I know that was months ago, and I know that life changes, but one of the things that you talked about was just that you don't do the same work in the same environment, back to back.
Right.
Or in other words, when you're doing, let's just say when you're filming podcasts, you're in a different environment than when you're, doing something different that you do. I know that you do a lot of things as an entrepreneur, whether you're writing articles or whether you're writing podcasts or whether you're doing video calls. And so that's one thing, is just realizing that, matching the type of work you do and the environment you're in. And I think that, you're obviously a really good example of that. Other examples are there's a concept that I call forcing functions. It actually comes from design thinking. And a forcing function is basically, so when it comes to software, when someone designs software, they obviously create constraints to make sure that the user doesn't make certain errors, like if you think about a microwave, for example, it only opens one way. It's a forced function, you can't open it like all sorts of ways. Like they literally, there's forced constraints. And so in the context of just behavior change, you can use all sorts of forcing functions. One example is just like, if you literally want to avoid stupid errors, which is removing willpower from the equation. A really easy one is just if you're coming home from work, for example, and you want to be present with your family, just leave your phone in the car or leave your phone at work. Like that would be a forcing function. It creates just a simple way to avoid error. And I talk about several different ways that you can put forcing functions into your life just as just simple mechanisms to create defaults that you want to have, rather than trying to, load your working memory with what should I do.
Yeah, and that's a good it's interesting for me because a lot of times people ask me about apps that will stop them from using certain websites, and like there's used to be an app called Concentrate, which would block you from looking at Facebook and things like that. And I was always kind of against them because to me it was like that forcing yourself to avoid the distraction is not really addressing the problem, but it does help obviously. And willpower, as we know, is finite. So to that extent, anything that you can do to brute force it a little bit will, I think, sort of help you act your way into a way of thinking.
Totally. Yeah, and I agree that it doesn't solve the total problem. There's a book called The Paradox of Choice by Dr. It's Barry Schwartz. And I think one of the big kind of interesting components is that, when you have too many choices, you really have a hard time making any. And so when I think about forcing functions, what I kind of think is just eliminating as many options as possible that I know are not good options, like good is the enemy of great kind of thing. And so it's like, if I can eliminate as many good options as I can so that I don't even have to have them in my mental awareness, so that I can just focus my attention on the better decisions. I think that's kind of the main point, is eliminating the options that you just don't even want to deal with anyways.
Yeah, for sure. So the last, actually, so one more thing is that in addition to the books and everything, you also have a course, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've sold, different types of courses. We don't really have to go into that, I guess. I mean, I have a course. Well, I mean, I'll just briefly. So I guess I'll focus on a specific course because this may be useful for your audience. So one of the ways that I've learned how to create automated income on medium.com is, so at the end of every article I write, so if someone wants to actually study the process, you just look up Benjamin Hardy, medium.com, click on any of my articles. At the bottom of my articles, there's a call to action. Right now it says, are you ready to upgrade? And then I'm offering a free morning checklist to get yourself into a peak state. And then when you click the link, it takes you to a landing page. And that landing page is very optimized. It gets 61% of the conversion. So 61% of people who click it give me their email. But what happens next is when someone gives me their email, they are then sent to a page that thanks them for giving me their email. And then there's a video of me talking about a $27 online course, and that course is making between $500 and $1,000 a day passive income, which is awesome. But really what the course is all about is it's about journal writing. It's about how to use your journal, whether it be to get creative insights, whether it be to get clarity, whether it be to just kind of emotionally regulate. And I talk about, related to the whole notion of environment and willpower doesn't work, I talk about writing in your journal, not only at specific times, but in specific places. And so what I've found is that it's so obviously Bill Gates, he did things like think weeks, you know what I mean? And Tim Ferriss talks about taking mini retirements, and there's a lot of awesome stuff about sabbaticals. And so I think that the reason why people get a lot of clarity outside of their routine environment is because a lot of the pressures and triggers and things like that, just about life, you kind of can let go of when you leave your routine environment. And so one of the things I talk about in the journaling course is that you should regularly take a day, ideally once a week, where you get outside your routine environment. You do whatever you do that would make you feel good, whether that's work out, read, talk to good friends, whatever you can do to put yourself into a heightened state. And because you're outside your routine environment, you're going to kind of have a little bit higher state of flow just because of the novelty just around you. And then I would say write in your journal in those situations and think about the big decisions you want to make in your life. Because one of the things that Tony Robbins says is, he says, first off, most people don't make powerful decisions. And the state of mind you're in when you make a decision determines the trajectory of that decision. And so for me, I want to, if I'm wanting to set huge goals for myself, or if I'm wanting to redirect my life, first off, I want to do it way outside my routine environment. And I want to do it when I'm in a heightened state. And then just kind of one last thought to add to that that's in the journaling course is, obviously, if you go outside your routine environment, you set huge goals or plans, you're obviously going to come back to an environment that's shaped all around your current self, which would keep you stuck. So you kind of have to you have to create a daily environment, which I think would be the whole purpose of a morning routine, where you could first off re-trigger that peak state that you had when you created the decision, but then decide every single day with intention who you want to be so that you can then kind of live up to the goals you set. So, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff, but the whole morning routine is about journal writing, journal writing for clarity, emotional regulation, creativity, all sorts of stuff. And that's just a $27 course. I really I don't even sell it on my website. It's just kind of an upsell to people who opt into my course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, honestly, everything that you put out, in my opinion, is there's big brain kind of stuff there. There's philosophical stuff, but a lot of it is really tactical, which is what appeals to me. Like almost everything that I read of yours, there's something that you can like do 5 minutes later, then see some sort of result. So that's, to me, is very special. So the last question that I always like to ask on these interviews, and I'm so excited to hear what your response is what are your top 3 pieces of advice for people to be more effective?
What was be more effective?
Effective, and you can interpret that however you like.
Okay, man. By the way, I just have to say, I know this has nothing to do with the question, but I'm such a huge fan of your work. I'm serious. So how to be more effective? I think that first off, one of the things that really helped me was just learning about the power of the morning. And I know that, a lot of people claim not to be morning people, but so there's an idea in psychology called self-signaling. And basically what it means is that we judge ourselves based on our behavior. So like, who you think you are. Like if someone says, I'm not a morning person, the reason they would judge themselves that way is not because they have a fixed personality of not being a morning person. In my opinion, and from the research, it's literally because they haven't been waking up in the morning. Like if you could literally trail back their behavior, they haven't been waking up in the morning and now they're judging their behavior to say, I'm not a morning person. If someone says I'm not creative, if you literally trailed back and looked at their behaviors, they probably haven't been trying creative stuff. So we judge ourselves based on our behavior. And so you can change how you perceive your identity by changing your behavior. And one of the things that I learned when I was, doing missionary work and stuff was just that my success during the day was determined based on kind of what I did before 8 a.m. And so, for the last 10 years, I've been spending my morning time either reading lots of books, writing in my journal, exercising, just spending my morning in good ways, which then kind of alters the trajectory of each of my days. And I think, over the course of, 10 years, it's kind of like compound interest. If you read a book or two a week over 10 years and you just change how you behave on a daily basis, your life can't not change. And so I would say to be more effective, constantly learn, constantly integrate new information into your worldview. Kind of like I was talking about with the Beatles. Use your mornings well. And then, as far as if it's like content creation or creativity, I really like the Joe Polish concept again, being prolific is better than being perfect. Done is better than perfect. Quantity is the path to quality. All of these ideas just focusing on action. And so I'll just kind of give like a few. I know that this is sort of tactical. I'll go into tactics in a second, but it's like, I think a big core of my worldview is this. It's not your personality that shapes your behavior. It's your behavior that shapes your personality. And so obviously you have and that is basically the essence of what we would call a growth mindset. But also like a lot of the research says that it's not confidence that creates success. It's successful behavior that creates confidence. It's not inspiration that leads to action. It's action that leads to inspiration and motivation. And so I think when it comes to being effective, it's just acting in the right way, creating the right routines. For me, that would be journal writing, reading, connecting with people like you, investing in yourself, as far as like investing in relationships, putting yourself in the right environments like mastermind groups or mentorships. So I said like a million things, and so I'm going to just weave this like back together. But obviously, never stop learning. I would say use your morning well. And then the third one would be invest first off in yourself, but also invest in the right environments and relationships, because this is in my opinion, I'm only going to share it for like 10 seconds, which this is something we could talk about for an hour. But so my belief, and it's something that, is found in psychology, is a person only gets out of life what they subconsciously believe they deserve. So Dr. David Hawkins said, the unconscious will only allow you to have what you believe you deserve. And so when you invest, let's just say like $25,000 as an example into Genius Network, which is totally not accessible to a lot of people, but let's just say you even invest $127 in an online course. What you do is you actually reframe your subconscious mind about what you believe you can have. That's, in my opinion, how you go from dreamer to doer. So it's like, if you start investing large amounts of money in your skill development and in your relationships, then that's, I think, how you not only shatter your limiting subconscious patterns and also create proximity to amazing people, but that's how you be effective with your time. So yeah, that's some of my thoughts.
Well, you did not disappoint. I was really looking for, I always ask that question. I always ask that question. And that was fantastic. So Ben, thank you so much.
Very unorganized, but yeah, thank you.
No, it was great. It was great. Hey, it's kind of like what you said, right? Quantity brings the quality. Like I like to say, like, just get it going, then get it right. Because stagnation is the enemy, as far as I'm concerned. So where can people find out more about you? Follow your stuff, get the book, because they have to get this book. What's the best place to find everything on you?
Absolutely. So obviously benjaminhardy.com is my website. I will send you a link, Ari, so that people can get it. But I believe that the book's just going to be at willpower doesn't work.com. You can always just, Google Benjamin Hardy and Willpower Doesn't Work. But I would just say willpower doesn't work.com, and I'll send you a link to that so that you can attach to the page. But yeah, that's where you can pre-order the book. And obviously, if you pre-order the book, you'll get the pre-order price, which is generally about 40 or 50%. Yeah, about 40% off. And I offer, a host of free bonuses, online courses. The journaling course I talked about, I give away for free. For people who pre-order 10 copies, I give away a course I made all about all of my strategies for writing viral articles, launching products, getting book deals, stuff like that. So yeah, willpowerdoesn'twork.com is fine.
Okay, well, I just reserved screwyourwillpower.com, so we got it covered. And I'll point
Perfect, dude.
So Ben, thank you so much. That was a pleasure.
Awesome, dude, Ari. I really appreciate you, man, and I'll talk to you soon, man.
Thank you for joining us today on the Less Doing podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share with your friends. For more information about Ari and his groundbreaking methods, please visit us online at lessdoing.com and on social media at Ari Mizell. We'll see you next week.